I'm Carmiece and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an answer that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back, they've been gone, they've been gone. Welcome. I had to cut it short, guys, because I have to hustle and run. Got a 1:30 meeting, got to deal with some issues, but it's attorney Carmiece Graves, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area family law attorney. Here I am, and today's video is about mistakes that I want you to avoid regarding marital property. There's a couple of things that I'm seeing that you guys are doing that I want you to not do, or at least have a heads up about some pitfalls and later heartaches that it can cause you, and it's relating to marital property. If I have enough time, I'm really encouraged to talk about this alimony trap. It applies equally to both genders or non-binary. I don't know how to do that these days, but it applies to everybody, okay? So men, women, whoever, whatever role you've played, if you're the breadwinner, it applies to the breadwinner. The breadwinner of the family has an alimony trap that could be brewing against them that I want you to be aware of. But about marital property, that is something that comes into play a lot. I'm seeing this a lot in the cases. So I figured I'd pop on really quick because every time it happens in my case. I'm like, I've got to do a video about this because I need you guys to know. So now here's what it is. It is this idea that there's a mismatch between who's on the deed and who's on the mortgage. I don't want to see this, guys. I don't know what's happening where you have husband and wife, spouses on the title, and only one party on the deed, usually the breadwinner, usually the financially responsible person. Now, I understand everything that I talk about here in family law, it's really intimate, it's really personal, it's your marriage. But I'm going to tell you some things are kind of red flags that I want you to watch out for that does not play out well down the road if you got to come down this lane to see me, okay? Everything work out in your marriage, these things don't apply. It's talking about when it might not work out. The thing that I'm concerned about is, again, this scenario where two people on the deed, one person on the mortgage. So one party, usually the story is one party didn't have the credit worthiness to be on the mortgage. Only one person had the credit worthiness to be financially responsible to be on the mortgage. Only one person is responsible for paying the mortgage, but two people own the property. Okay. Well, whatever decisions you make, let me tell you how that may play out down the road. If this thing does not work out between you two, and now there's always this thing about separating, someone has to leave, someone, you want to end the marriage, you want to call it quits, and you want to do your 1 year separation, right? Now, if everybody has skin in the game when it comes to this mortgage, right? Making sure that mortgage is paid is to the benefit of both parties. People want to protect their credit, right? Want to protect themselves from any foreclosure and any, deficiency judgments that may be assessed against them if the house goes up in foreclosure. You both equally have skin in the game. I don't like to see people flapping in the wind because they have a spouse that says, I'm not going nowhere and I don't care if the mortgage is paid because my name ain't on the mortgage. That is a problem, okay? Other thing that it causes so usually what happens is one person really did all the financing and did all the responsible things needed to buy this asset, but wanted to make their spouse feel equal and come into the marriage together. I'm not judging. Do what you got to do. I've done it all. Look, I ain't do that one. Okay, so you want to put your spouse on there. You make that decision. Now you give them. Now the ownership of the property comes from the deed. Okay, the responsibility to pay for it comes from the mortgage. Okay, so that's a big gift. So you split the equity based on who's on the title to the deed, who gets the credit dings goes to the mortgage. And what happens is I'm having separations, I'm having divorces where that thing is not balanced. And the person who's on the mortgage is kind of trapped in there because they maybe want to leave the marriage. The other person is really comfortable. Maybe they took care of other things besides this mortgage. And the other spouse is quite comfortable. And this has been not just male, female, a lot of combinations. It's not just, it's usually the person that has that creditworthiness, that person that is the breadwinner in the family. They want to move on, they want to move out, but they're trapped with this idea that, oh my gosh, this person will not pay the mortgage. So that adds another wrinkle. It adds another thing to deal with. And it is an exposure that I think you can avoid or just know about. When it comes to family law, this is the no judgment zone because it's a matter of the heart. But I just want you to know that thing there, that inequity, that imbalance has caused issues. Okay. I've had cases where clients have been advised by the pastor that, you got to share everything alike. And this man don't feel right and whole because he not on the deed. And client went and added him to the deed. And it was now, if it doesn't work out because you added this person to the deed, they've done nothing to contribute to the asset, now you are dealing with splitting the equity or having a hard time taking possession of the property. Because in Maryland, you don't have to be on the deed to have a person acquire interest in the marital property. That's another thing to know. Just a tip, it's not title based unless you get a prenuptial agreement. This says, hey, we're not going to just automatically acquire interest in each other's stuff because we got married. We're going to make a conscious decision about that. And this little asset that I worked on when I was single before I met you, I want to just keep that because I may want to rent that, Airbnb that. I just want that to be a separate asset, give that to my mama, my cousins, my nieces, my nephews, but not you, I'm sorry, a part of family law. Remember, people say, I've listened to documentaries about marriage, but a lot of this stuff is about property and succession, right? So these marital rights are really more to do with property than kids and all of that stuff. Although we have great developed laws to help you resolve those issues the best the court can, although they tend not to want to do that. Like, let me stay with the money and the property, and please, parents, come together and deal with the custody and child support regarding your kids. I will handle child support, but please, in terms of where your kids go to school and all that and what religion they're going to be, please, for goodness sake, come together and co-parent. So think about that the marriage contract, that license that you get. Maybe you got to go get a license. And they say, okay, you want to do this? Okay, fine. Go ahead and do it. I hope you know that's all that's involved because there's a lot of laws, that are in the background managing what's happening between the two of you as it relates to assets. And I think that you want to have a consultation and understand that if you're getting married and you have property, you should be thinking about protecting your assets, putting that in some sort of trust, putting that away, maybe, modern day prenuptial agreements that say, hey, just don't bother my retirement. Anything that we build together from here on out between me and you, it's good. From here on out, between you and I, whatever we develop is bona fide, a marital asset. We develop it together. But in terms of things that I need for retirement or I've had coming in, that's what the modern day simple, prenuptial agreement does. And, every time I get on this Zoom, I don't really know what's going to come out of my being, but I'll tell you, some people think that the prenuptial agreement is a hard hitting document. I mean, it can be if it's bare and it has nothing in it, but it's things that you could decide, like, hey, if we separate and you need some alimony to help you out, okay, we'll decide, I'll give you, I don't know, $2,500, $3,000 for a year to get you on your feet or something like that. If we separate, if we divide assets, it makes those kind of rational. I think it's really loving, to think about, listen, while we still love each other, why don't we come up with how we may have to deal with it if it don't work out? Because nothing's promised, nothing's guaranteed. You're just doing the best you can, going on this adventure together, and to do it while you're not mad before the betrayal, before the cheating, before you realize someone's a crazy narcissist. It's probably better to come up with this now on the front end. So that's just a plug there. So I think people should use them more, especially if you're getting married, and you're mature mature and you've developed some things. When you got nothing, hey, go for it, right? So anyway, that's my tip on the marital property. Watch the mismatch. That can cause some issues with possession, like taking back possession, like who, because once you've given them, half of the equity or made them joint, title owners to the asset, you can't tell people just leave. You know what I mean? If you've been, so that's my tip there. Now it goes into the second part of this that I want to talk about quickly, which is the alimony trap. Now, this is something that both men and women experience. Again, it's tied to the breadwinner, right? It's not tied to the gender. So, and the reason why I say it's the alimony trap, and the only thing I'm giving you here is a blueprint of how it tends to develop against a person's will, right? So that if it's happening to you, you kind of know what's going on and you can at least be aware of it. Because again, like I say, family law is personal. This is matters of the heart. It's not just business. But I just want you to be aware and know what's going on. So it's not beyond you. Okay? Hold on. I want to make sure this thing is doing what it's supposed to be doing. All this technology, child. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to do all that. I'll do that later. Okay. So here's the one. So alimony. So pretty much the concept is that, let me just get down to it. Everybody kind of knows what this is about. But the modern day, like regular average day people, alimony, not the Bezos and the Dr. Dre's and all those. It's so interesting to see you guys talk about those numbers and what's ridiculous. You didn't even, it's funny for me in that regard. Like it's hard for people, I think, to fathom what a lifestyle folks live. I'm like, it don't even relate to you. I mean, you take the alimony if someone offered it to you, but you're like, she didn't do nothing. And I'm like, really? That's not kind of how that's set up. It's not that you have to roll up your sleeves equally. It's, did you contribute to the person's well-being? You know what I mean? Were you on that arm? Were you rubbing that back? Were you providing that support? Were you adding to the person's happiness? They're like, it's not worth that. And be like this, listen, stay in your lane. Okay. So a lot of these things are fine, Now, how it develops though, but let's talk about it. So how the concept of alimony can develop is that if you take on the financial responsibilities of a person and you tell them, no, I got it, and they rely on that. And then all of a sudden this situation is no longer working. But for the last 10 years, I haven't been doing anything but focusing on trying to be your spouse. And now that's over, or it's been 20 years, or it's been 30 years, and I've been doing nothing other than being a spouse, mother, and wife. Well, no, it's not just over. And no, we were working together on those adventures. Remember when you came home and said, baby, let me tell you about this new business plan. And I said, go for it. Go, do it. I'll support. Don't worry about this. I got the camp down. Now, that's generally the concept. That's generally how it goes. The court's not going to just look at, if you worked in a business, it's going to say, did you contribute to the marriage? See, the marriage made that money, not just one spouse. The couple together as an entity made that money, unless there's a prenuptial agreement. They together made that money. Now, so the trap in this is when you didn't get the benefit of your bargain, when you weren't happy about the marriage, but yet you found, and the trap is where you really didn't have this comfortable lifestyle, where your spouse kind of abandoned their responsibilities financially to the marriage and kind of left you high and dry. And it was against your will and your protest to get a job, help out. The trap here is if that persists over time, you still can develop the pattern of this person financially relying upon you and you not doing anything about it, and it's 10 years and they didn't work. And you'll say, I've had cases where the men say, listen, I never was okay with it. I complained about it. And I say it's a trap because I really don't have an answer for it. All I can think is the most, remember, this is like a marital property, right? The court's kind of vicious. Like, well, you should have took care of this a long time ago. I mean, that's really what they say. Like, don't let it linger too long. But is it that simple? No, you have kids involved. You want your family to stay together, and that's usually what people choose. And I am not in the middle of that decision, but people have to choose to keep a cohesive family together so that their kids are not in a bifurcated household versus letting this spouse kind of drag the vibe and not contribute. That's the trap of it. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation, and those are some tough calls to make, but time is the thing that really works against you. That if you know it, we're not doing that well, and she was supposed to work and kept saying, or he was supposed to go back and get some more skills and contribute, and it was me carrying all the bills, and we weren't doing that well, and maybe the other spouse is making money and progressing in their career, saving for the 401k. And if that separates, and in the middle of it, I think the telltale sign is if it's a constant blower and it's not working out, don't let time just drag along, because it is ticking against you in that regard. So this is not easy stuff. Only thing that I like to try and do is add a little bit more awareness of how this looks after the fact, because then the story's been written. The fact that I can't undo 12 years of your spouse not working. Some of the things you might want to look for: make sure they got a good education. Make sure they have an employment history. Make sure, this is probably on the front end of getting involved to that degree. This is why it's important to look for spouses that have these, because those are the things the court looks at, their employment history, their educational background, their physical, health, emotional health. So knowing these things about your spouse, if you don't, but things happen in life that, we're not saying, life doesn't happen, but you're happening together as a couple. So just know that when, just these are some things that are coming up, and I see people caught up in the end, and it seems a bit unfair that you were struggling and the person was just dragging on the vibe, and they weren't really contributing in that regard, and then want to turn around because of whatever, and now claim that you should contribute to their support because they have been dependent upon you, and it's been a marriage for a number of years, and that work history is not there. That's good sauce for some sort of alimony, just so you know. So if that's happening and things are not picking up, and you go into, marital counseling, and you're not getting the benefit of your bargain, and it's not a happy place, please just be aware and present, and make sure, that this is time well spent, and that this is going in the right direction, because they don't give that much credence to these things in terms of, the cause of the demise of the marriage is one factor in Maryland out of 11. It's one of the factors in DC, and DC has a few, several more, right? So it's only one factor, so that thing is a real thing, because it's thinking about the economics, that this person has been in this marriage where they should be able to rely on their spouse financially, and they have been, and now you just want to, and whether it's rehabilitative versus permanent goes to how long you guys have been married, the age of the party, like I said, the health and, the physical and mental health of the party, and number one. And here's one thing I want you to know about alimony, that the court will not make a person destitute to pay alimony. Some people have some really unrealistic expectations. You know what I mean? Like, we're working class folks here. Nobody got money for being you, So if the numbers don't add up, and it's not possible for you to pay your mortgage plus somebody else's rent, the numbers have to make sense. So the court's not going to make you destitute behind it, right? It's when you have that excess surplus money, and you might not, you let this thing go 20, 30 years, and it's kind of those situations where nothing's happening, but you're just not doing anything about it. You know who you are. I'm not talking about good, healthy, vibrant relationships. It's those where you've been living in separate ends of the house for 5 years, 6 years. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Take action. So, like I said, okay, this is the perfect time for me to do my little favorite thing here. I love this technology. Did it go? Oh, there you go. So if you need additional information on this topic of alimony, you're kind of wanting to see where you are with it, feel free to reach out to us. We can do a consultation. I hope you guys are enjoying the holiday season. People are having holiday parties. We're trying to get back to some normalcy in life. Be safe. Take care of yourself. If you guys need me, you know how to reach me. And I'm working on getting back into my rhythm and flow as I'm in my new space. I'll give you guys a virtual tour, but I can't get any furniture because of supply chain. But we're working on it. We're coming along. But being in the building and being in the expanded space of the Carmiece Grace Law Firm is enough for me. And I really have a much appreciation all the time. So you guys stay safe, and I'll check in with you soon. Thanks so much. All right, I'm signing off.
I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with.
Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back, they've been gone, they've been gone.